Three, two, one. We are recording. Hello and welcome to the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. I am David Mamano, your host, and we are here to help entrepreneurial achievers and business owners and leaders move forward so that they can reach their potential. I do this by interviewing the nation's best business movers and shakers. Today, I have on the show a real mover and shaker. I'm going to say an 11 out of 10 mover and shaker, Paul Martinelli. Paul, welcome to the show.
Right on. Thank you, David. I'm really appreciate the opportunity to have this platform and to be introduced to your audience. And hopefully, in the next 30, 45 minutes, we can add value to that.
I love it. I love it. Well, we certainly are. Avanti, being Italian, you may know that it means move forward, and we're gonna move the Avanti family forward today with all the great nuggets that you have in your life experience, journey, brain, and you're gonna share with us. So, odds are that you may have heard of Paul Martinelli. He's doing some great things around the world. If you haven't heard of Paul, you've heard of John Maxwell, and Paul. Went to John Maxwell, what was it, 2011, I want to say?
2010 with the idea, and then built the idea out for about 9 months, and then it was really kind of birthed in 2011. March of 2011 is when we launched our company.
Cool. Well, I'm going to read your bio, then we're going to get into that because this is a really fascinating bio because it talks about how you were born very wealthy, blue blood, right? Castles. I mean, Lamborghini.
Rockefeller background. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that and then to see how you took it to the next level. So Paul Martinelli, speaker, mentor, business builder. He is internationally acclaimed entrepreneur, speaker, trainer, and mentor. And he knows the power of belief. A high school dropout from a Pittsburgh working class family, Paul overcame a stuttering disability and a dim future to rise from janitor to millionaire entrepreneur. He has shared the stage with such personal development masters such as John Maxwell, Seth Godin, Les Brown, Mark Victor Hansen, Jack Canfield, Wayne Dyer, Brian Tracy, Dennis Waitley, Nick Vujicic. Yeah. Sorry about that one. And Zig Ziglar. Today, Paul is the president of the John Maxwell team, an elite group of certified coaches and communicators mentored by the #1 leadership expert in the world and New York Times bestselling author John Maxwell. At age 14, Paul was recruited by anti-crime activist Curtis Sliwa, who founded the Guardian Angels to help protect New York City subways. By the time Paul was 22, he was second in command of the influential organization that set up unarmed volunteer safety patrols in some of the toughest neighborhoods in the United States and Canada. This demanding leadership post fueled Paul's courage and confidence and eventually brought him to West Palm Beach, Florida in 1986. 2 years later, with a whopping $200 and a used vacuum cleaner, he founded At Your Service Cleaning Company. Seeking to grow his business, Paul began to study and apply the principles of human potential. His dynamic and creative approach and astounding results earned him Northwood University's prestigious Arthur E. Turner Entrepreneur of the Year Award, presented by Richard DeVos, founder of Amway. In 2006, Paul sold his cleaning company and became a full-time personal development speaker, trainer, and coach. He began providing masterminds, lunch and learns, and speaking engagements for groups and individuals seeking personal growth, business success, and overall fulfillment. His awareness and ability to apply the success strategies and principles that he was learning and sharing with others led to Paul's accomplishments in life and business, and as he grew his speaking, coaching, and training services into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. In 2011, Paul partnered with John Maxwell to found the John Maxwell team. In his role as president, Paul leads the fastest growing certification program in the world for coaches, speakers, and trainers, growing the membership to over 20,000 within its first 7 years. John Maxwell said, aside from my faith and family, the decision to create the John Maxwell team is the best decision I ever made. Paul's creation of the certification program earned him the Marcus Buckingham's Leading Leaders Award, which recognizes innovators who inspire excellence in others. Having worked his way up from the mop bucket to millionaire, Paul has practiced and proven what he preaches. His thirst and passion for growth is evident in his desire to help others achieve success, the true mark of a great leader. Paul, that is a great bio, and obviously, I was kidding about being the blue bud. I love the mop to millionaire. That's that a title of your book yet? Because that could be your next book, right?
Very easily, yeah.
high school dropout. I saw you speak when you were here in Rochester a little over a year ago. That's how I met you, through Heather Manzano, Maria Cast, some leaders here in Rochester affiliated with John Maxwell, and Heather moved to be near you. We'll talk about that. But great speech, and anybody that looks at you today would think like, massively successful and probably had a head start, right? I mean, that's where you are. But you were telling me, telling us on stage, and you mentioned your stutter, and you mentioned, high school dropout, and you talked about your brothers and sisters who, if I remember correctly, were like astounding in their careers. I think doctors, physics, astrophysics, all this stuff. And then there was Paul, the high school dropout. But you, through a lot of faith and hard work and just unbelievable faith in your ability to succeed, you just pounded away at step by step at creating a wonderful future for yourself, and therefore the ability to help others.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing, David. When I think back, we are programmed to believe that DNA and environment, trumps all, right? And here I was. My father left my mother when she was 3 months pregnant with me. So my mom's raising, 4 kids as a single mom. And, we grew up in a traditional Italian family that you can appreciate. So, the Olive Garden Italian, we are not, right? We had gravy, not sauce. I grew up as an altar boy at the St. Bernard's Catholic Church. And it was really in kind of that socioeconomic background, that cultural environment, that with those religious beliefs, that I was programmed to believe things about me and believe things about my potential. And at a very early age, when most kids start to speak, I didn't. I had just a terrible stutter problem. And as we all have experienced as kids, kids can be pretty cruel on the playground of life. And so they would tease me and make fun of my stutter. They would call me the dummy, and they would say, "Hey, stupid." And I knew it hurt my feelings, David, but I didn't know the impact. It would be later in my life when I realized that our beliefs are really created 2 ways. One way is through spaced repetition of time. That's being introduced to an idea or concept over and over and over again until it becomes fixed in our subconscious mind. The second way our beliefs are formed is through an emotional set of impact. Something happens to you, and in that moment, you define that as your truth. And so I took on kind of this belief that I was dumb and stupid. In the 1970s, when I was going to school, learning disability as speech impediment was considered a learning disability. So I was labeled as learning disabled. I was not learning disabled. I had a stuttering problem, but I wasn't learning disabled until they told me I was, right? And so the teacher would take my file, first grade, and pass it to the second grade teacher. She would look at it and say, "Okay, learning disabled. Let's put them in the back of the room. Let's not expect much." And I found my whole life I rose to those lowered expectations. And at 10th grade, I had enough. I had never passed a test. They called me into the office and told me that my educational career had come to an abrupt end, that I would never be able to complete the requirements to graduate. And the interesting thing is my brothers and sisters, as you mentioned, my one brother, David, graduated from Carnegie Mellon University as a civil engineer. My brother, Tom, flew Apache helicopter pilot. He was an Apache helicopter pilot. My sister graduated #1 in her nursing class. So environment and DNA certainly had nothing to do with my failure or their success. What had everything to do is who we believe we are. Maxwell Maltz said that we will never outperform our own self-image, our own self-belief. And that really was the starting point for me. When I launched my cleaning business, I didn't start it, David, because I wanted to be, Mr. Clean of America. I started because I thought, any dummy could clean a toilet, and I was any dummy.
So what turned it around for you? What reversed that course to change your beliefs to say, "Hey, I'm not a dummy. Just because I had a stuttering problem doesn't mean that I'm not intelligent." How did you do a really a 180 and start, raising that bar for yourself?
Well, the short answer is no limiting belief can withstand the assault of truth. And I really, through divine intervention, when I was 24 years old, 2 years after starting the business, I had grown the business to a certain level, and then I got stuck. And I always say stuck stinks. I couldn't grow it anymore. It was like all of a sudden everything was working, and then somebody just turned out the lights. And so everything I was doing to grow the business stopped. And I didn't realize what the threshold I had hit was the threshold of my own self-belief of what I was capable of. Remember, we never outperform our own self-belief, our own self-image. And I ran into a guy who was a retired stockbroker in New York, highly successful. And he handed me a book titled Think and Grow Rich. And he agreed to mentor me word by word to the book. And over the next 3 years, he never once taught me what to think. He taught me how to think. And so when I would sit down with him and I would say, I can't grow the business because, he would challenge every one of those becauses. And I said, I can't do it because I'm a high school dropout. I didn't realize Edison only had 3 months of education. I can't do it because I don't have contacts. And so what he began to do is he would show me every excuse or reason why I was saying I couldn't be, do, or have what I knew in my heart was my potential. He would show me a real life story of somebody who had even worse challenges and they had made it. So he really introduced me to my BS, my own belief system, and said, look, you don't get in this life what you want. You get what you believe to be your truth. And so it's a matter of changing your beliefs. What do you really want? Why do you believe that because you're a high school dropout that you can't get rich? Why do you believe that as a janitor, you can't become millionaires? And he started to show me at companies like American Building Maintenance that were generating nearly $1 billion a year in revenue. And he said, look, you can be, do, or have whatever it is that you're willing to make agreement with. And up until now, you've been making agreement with every limitation.
That's fantastic. So really a lot of the credit, as you said, Divine Interaction goes to a great mentor who decided
Patrick Case. Patrick Case was his name. Yep.
Yeah, pick you up and say, I'm gonna focus on helping this kid. And what a great story. A great reminder to us to be a mentor to people, right? That maybe need that, that push to get to that next level. And I'm sure he's very proud of what he did with you, right? I mean, look at you now. So that's a great story. I love when young people especially reach out to me and they want to pick my brain. And I'm always willing to do that. I'm like, yeah, come on over, or let's meet for a cup of coffee. When I was 25, I started my first company, and our local billionaire in Rochester here is Tom Golisano, the founder of Paychex, right? The largest, largest payroll company in the world now, right? And but in 1995, I mean, it was go time. They were doubling in public company, and he was a really busy man. And when I started my first company, at night I was a waiter at a local Italian restaurant called Mario's, and I just happened to wait on his executive assistant. And I go, do you think Tom would meet with me and I could pick his brain? And she goes, I'll ask him. Well, I gave her my new little card, my business card, and about a week later, she called me. She's like, yeah, Tom will meet with you. Meet him at the North Side Inn. It's this, great little Italian restaurant here in Rochester, and he'll have lunch with you. And I brought a notepad. And took tons of notes. That guy spent like 2 hours with me.
Wow. Tons
of nuggets, bought me lunch, right? And I've kept in touch with Tom over the years. In fact, I just had him on my podcast a few months ago. And just a wonderful mentor to not only me, but many people. And he gave me an idea at that lunch that really changed the whole course of my business idea at that time. So it's just a good reminder, just go back to good old values of helping people, right? Look what a difference it can make.
I love that story. And I'm in the last, 9 months, David, as I've, been traveling the world, I spend probably 2 or 3 months in the summer in Europe. I've got a big business in Europe. I always say I'm big in Romania.
Kind of a big deal in Romania, right?
It's a big deal in Romania. Like I've got billboards, right? In Florida, nobody knows who I am.
Yeah.
But, for the last 9 months, I've been on almost a personal mission to shut the voice down of the 99 percenters that are blaming the rich for everything. There is a really dangerous energy in the world today where we are demonizing the wealth creators. And we're almost defining them as, George Bush would clone the term, evil doers. And, you're a learned person. You're a well-traveled person. You've met people all over the world. I don't know about you, but I've never met anybody who's been successful, who hasn't had a giving spirit, who hasn't given back, who hasn't tried to add value to other people with how is this guy in your life or Patrick in my life ever going to expect you to, contribute back to their life at the same rate that they're never, right? There's no expectation at all. And I just encourage all of your listeners to, when you're at that backyard barbecue, when you're at that, B&I meeting or chambers meeting, when you're at the church function and somebody starts to kind of demonize the rich and the one percenters, I grew up in Pittsburgh, as you said. And, I didn't realize this growing up because I was programmed to hate the rich. I was programmed that the only way people got rich was by, stealing from the poor, basically, right? That the only reason why they got rich and had more was because we had less. That there's only so much of a pie and, they were taking more than their fair share. And, growing up, we would take, as little kids, we would take, bus trips, field trips to, Carnegie Science Center, Carnegie Museum, Carnegie Hall, Carnegie this, Carnegie that. Never realizing the reason why they were called Carnegie is because he built the building.
Yeah.
He financed the whole thing. So when you're taking your grandma or your mom to the Cohen Cancer Pavilion, remember, there's a family named Cohen that gave that money.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're going down to Frick Park on the weekend to enjoy a beautiful park, recognize that a family bought that land and gave that back. So I just, when I hear stories like you're sharing, and I know in my story, there's millions of stories of guys like that and women like that who have made such a difference in your life, my life, millions and millions of people that are untold, unknown, and yet these people are being demonized, and it's a sin. It really is.
Well, I think, great point. I think what happens in human nature is, there's a beautiful blue sky, but someone sees the cloud, that little cloud. Let's talk about the cloud. And and so out of all the rich people, there's going to be some that are devious, right? And there's devious poor people, right? But so let's focus on those devious, very few, and demonize the rest, right? And it's very unfair. It's very unfair. And to your point, I mean, in Rochester here, this Golisano, hospitals, college buildings, he's given more money to children's causes, children's health causes, right? And education here in Rochester. Now he's doing it in Florida because he's in the Naples area as well. Of course, saving taxes, right, from New York State. But and then Kodak, obviously here in Rochester, New York forever. People know Kodak now. Yeah. Kind of fell down, getting back up. But, hey, listen, for 100 years, it was one of the biggest brands in the world, probably rivaled Coca-Cola for the most popular brand ever. And George Eastman Kodak Company, founded Kodak here in Rochester in the 1800s. And to your point, he built schools and hospitals and dental clinics and an orchestra and was he trying to build a community where people wanted to live so they could work at Kodak? Sure. But at the same time, it was a win-win, right?
Right on. And you know what? I'll tell you, that's the only way it's sustainable. I mean, if you're going to be able to do good in the world, trust me, Wallace D. Waddle says, get rich first. You can feed a lot more hungry kids with money than you can with well wishes.
Yes, that's true.
And so, I mean, if you think about it, if you monetize something, it's sustainable.
Yep. Well, yeah, I like that idea too. That point too is don't be afraid about making tons of money, because the more money you make, the more people you can help, right? I mean,
behind me, you've got all these public traded companies. Polio is all but eradicated. All but eradicated because Bill and Melinda Gates gave $1 billion, connected with the Rotary, and the Rotary sent people over to India and all the other places in the world where, polio was, out of control, and inoculated, child after child after child after child, hundreds of millions of children that otherwise would be crippled today. And there was a time in human history where the plan for polio was make more wheelchairs, right?
Yeah.
Jonas Salk has a different vision and says, hold it, why don't we think cure instead of disease? And Gates says, well, everybody else is talking about the problem, and the World Trade Organization, the UN, they're all going to think about it. He's going to write a check and make things happen.
Wow. What a great twist to look at that, right? Speaking of Bill Gates, a little side note, there is a new documentary on Netflix called Inside Bill's Brain about Bill Gates. And it talks about a lot about his life, but a lot about this first episode. I think it's going to be a multi-series. But the first episode talks about now he and his wife, Melinda, their new mission is clean drinking water, especially in Africa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of kids dying because of diarrhea every year in Africa, whereas, our kids here in America get diarrhea and we go to the store and we buy, something and boom, they're all better, so it's like, it was unbelievable to them. So they're doing something about it.
You think about it. There's a video YouTube of, you could just YouTube search Bill Gates and the word SHIT, right?
Yeah.
And he's got this whole global campaign right now to find the very best toilet in the world because of the infrastructure problems in third world countries. They don't have the ability to process, the wastewater. And so here's like the guy that started Microsoft, right? One of the smartest guys in the world, really focusing on poop, right? Yeah. Because he understands the problems of the world. Yeah. And so how do you solve the problem of the world? He put a $10 million reward up for somebody who could solve the toilet problem without having an infrastructure. Brilliant. Yeah. And he will save tens of millions of people's lives, children's lives, because he has the financial resources and the heart to do it. And I think that's really at the heart of what entrepreneurship is. It's not just about the accumulation or generation of wealth. It's really about what does that wealth end up representing in the long haul? What can you then do with it? Because, after you've got, several houses and beautiful things, what are you going to do with the money? You're going to serve people. Yep.
I love it. No, very, very inspiring. And, so Paul, I am so impressed with your journey. I definitely want to tell the Avanti family, I want to hear from you about your journey. So John Maxwell, he is not even, I was going to say arguably, there's no argument about it. He's a legend. He's a living legend, the premier leadership training expert in the world. I don't even think that's my opinion. I just think it's a fact. I mean, he's written dozens of books. He's been around. And what I like about John, I met him years ago at a Darren Hardy event. And I was secretly hoping that the myth, the man, the legend would actually be as I pictured him, which is really almost like this really great kind of grandfatherly, uncle type of guy, warm, loving, friendly. And he was. It was such a, because sometimes you meet these legends and they're just like
your hero, right?
Their ego is taken over. And John was such a nice guy. Spent a lot of time with us, and I really felt like I was talking to, if I had another grandfather, it would have been him.
And John, yeah.
But so now here's you, cleaning service, got into speaking, motivational company. So how did you happen to one day say, you know what, I'm going to call John Maxwell and see what we can do together?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating story. And I think it's a story of creation that I think everybody can use, at least as kind of a blueprint for achievement and success. Everything we see, David, is created twice. Yeah, it starts in the mind of an individual, right? We first form the idea here in our mind, and then it moves into physical form and manifests. So I had sold my company after 18 years in 2006. I started to partner and speak with some of the top names, Wayne Dyer, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, you named them. And I realized that most of these fantastic speakers really didn't have companies. When they held a microphone, they were making $50,000 an hour. When they put the microphone down, they were unemployed. And from my cleaning business, what I learned was really two powerful wealth creation techniques. number one, duplication. Finding something and finding a system and being able to duplicate it over and over and over and over again. It's McDonald's, right? And I figured out, I applied I read a book called Behind the Arches, the true story of McDonald's. I recognized that what he did was he created systems that removed decisions from people and mass produced it. And then I recognized the real power in having reoccurring revenue. And so what I started to do was I started going to these thought leaders like Les Brown and partnering with them and saying, look, let me take your intellectual property and let me build some duplicatable systems that we can put tens of thousands of people into programs at the same time, and that would generate reoccurring wealth for you, and most importantly for them, because if they're not winning, it's not sustainable. And so by the time I met John, I had already generated probably around $100 million for other thought leaders doing this. And so I had a friend, back in 2006, I started a mastermind group, and one of the guys in my mastermind group was being mentored by John. I had never even heard of John. So in 2008, I hired John to speak at an event, saw him on stage, like you, blown away. He was probably one of the most effective communicators I had ever seen. And so a seed was planted in me. 2 years later, I was launching my own business, and I asked my friend to see if John would be willing to do a call for me. And so I hired him to be on kind of a public call that would allow me to market to the world that I was going to be interviewing John Maxwell so I could grow my list. So I paid John the fee. He did the interview. And the next day he asked my friend, what does this guy Paul do? And my friend said, he sets up coaching. And John said, I want nothing to do with it. And then he told him the amount of money I was generating. And John said, well, you know what? See,
I'll talk to him.
We'll talk to him. So we sat down at lunch, and I'll never forget it, Dave. It was one of the most interesting things. I had given him kind of an outline, a kind of really high-level executive summary, no numbers, but the general gist of what I could do. And I'll never forget, John looks back and he says, I've realized that there's two types of ideas. Ideas that work and ideas that require you to make them work. And I found that ideas that require you to make them work are a horrendous waste of energy. Now, here's a guy that has written 125 books.
Is that right? That many? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Words mean things to him. He's the number 6 all-time seller on Amazon.com. Number 1 is the Bible. He's 5 from God, right?
Right.
So here's a guy. Here's a guy that makes his living as a wordsmith and uses the word that it's a horrendous waste of energy. So I thought, he's getting ready to let me down. And then he puts his hand on top of my kind of proposal and says, and what I like about this is an idea that has legs. This idea would work. And so I was able to sit down with him, his whole team, his wife, his family. I cast the vision for the business. And here I think is really a critical point for all of your listeners, David. I was not the first person to go to John Maxwell with the idea. I'm not that smart. But I was the first one to say to John, here's what I'm going to do, John. I'm going to take $400,000 of my own money. I'm going to hire the staff. I'm going to build the platform. I'm going to take all the risks. I'm going to guarantee you the first $1 million out of the business to cover your time for the first year. See, up until I met him, everybody else went to John and said, John, I got an idea for coaching. Why don't you fund the building of Why don't you fund the building of a platform? Why don't you finance the entire building? And then why don't we be partners 50-50?
Yeah.
So what I did was I created what I call a killer offer. I put in front of John a value proposition that he could not afford to say no to. I'll take all the risk. I'll bet on me. I think as an entrepreneur, what you have to be really comfortable with doing is walking into the casino of life and putting all the chips on you.
All down. Yeah.
All down and double down. And that's what I did. And we launched.
You made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Yeah. I'm Luca Brasi, right?
That's right.
So I spent the next probably 9 months assembling a faculty, building the platform, creating the infrastructure. In 2011, we launched. I came up with an idea to kind of grow that first list. What was called A Minute with Maxwell. He had about 100,000 followers on his Facebook page. Back then, David, it was called a fan page. And I told John, I said, look, you got 103,000 fans. My goal is to turn them into fanatics. The difference is, a fanatic is a fan in action, a fan that's engaged in doing something. Right. And so what I did was I searched through not every one of those names, but many of those names. And I would find somebody who was connected to John on Facebook who was an up-and-coming, aspiring coach or speaker. And I would send them an email and say, hey, look, I'm president of John Maxwell's team. John's doing this program where he highlights a speaker for 60 seconds each day. You submit a word, and John will say your name, your city, what you do as a coach or speaker, and then he'll teach on your word. And, of course, every up-and-coming speaker wanted that exposure to John. And what we did is once we recorded it, I went back to that person and said, here's going to be the link. Get all your friends and family to sign up so they can see John on the video. So we grew a list almost overnight to about 40,000 people. We launched the program. That was back in 2011. We just passed 26,000 members, 160 countries. This month, the month of October and the month of April, for the last 2 years, our members have committed to an idea called the Global Youth Initiative, where John Maxwell team members from around the world teach youth leadership, values, self-esteem to young kids for free. In the last 2 years, only doing this 2 months of each of those years, we've trained over 700,000 kids. To keep that in perspective, think of the Super Bowl filled 10 times. And so we've created really an army of engaged people that are not only carrying the values of John, but are also living their dream, right? They have a desire to be an agent of change in the lives of other people. They want to be a voice of transformation around the world. And having the mantle of who John Maxwell is a door opener. He just won the Horatio Alger Award. There's only been 300 of those. He holds the award for Mother Teresa's Luminary Award for Peace. Guru.com has named him the #1 leadership expert 10 years in a row. He's #1 in Inc. magazine, Success magazine, you name it. He's won the award.
Yeah, that is a great story. That is a great, great story. And I love that. What you just talked about is like how he picked you, because you literally made it so easy for him. And really, what was his risk? The only risk is that, you were not an honorable guy and you could taint his reputation. But obviously you checked that box, you passed that. He had faith in you that you were a good man of integrity and character. So as long as you passed that, the rest was a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, really, if you think about it, I was willing to take all the risks. I always said, if I were, I don't have a book, but my first book is going to be titled, Tell Me If You Like This. Why are you making it so hard for me to give you my money?
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So true. Because people, as entrepreneurs, we create all kinds of systems and structures that you have to jump through 10 hoops in order to do business with someone.
Right. Yeah.
Can't we just cut to the chase, move at the speed of trust, and make it really easy?
Yeah.
I have the standing rule in my own personal life and in business. I don't negotiate with people. I don't ever negotiate. I will never negotiate with price. I give somebody my best price. I don't lower my price. Somebody gives me a price. I don't ever try to beat them up to lower the price. It's either yes or no. Yeah. So, I think, when I went to John, I didn't try to negotiate with John. If you understand negotiation, the very best negotiators are the ones that are willing to leave the table without the deal done. I didn't want to leave the table without the deal done. I went to the table to close the deal.
Yeah, so you did.
I'm going to give everything I got, and I did. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's been, I'm sure he's been very happy since that day.
We've generated over $250 million in our division of the enterprise. We, of course, you can't do something like that inside of a brand and your book sales not go up. His bookings have gone up. All of his other secondary programs have all popped because of that. And he is, if you think about the personal development movement, we've had Jim Rohn pass away. His work is dead and gone. We had Wayne Dyer pass away. His work is dead and gone. We had Zig Ziglar pass away. His work is dead and gone. Outside of Dale Carnegie, who's been dead now for 60 years, there is no other thought leader that has an army of people that can truly be the legs to a legacy. John, I think, if we do this right, if we are really good stewards of his time, if we're really good stewards of his message, John will be the only other thought leader other than Dale Carnegie who 50 years after his death, there will still be people teaching, speaking, and training, all because of the free market enterprise capitalist system that we were blessed to live in. It makes it sustainable.
Well, and all because you had this idea to have that divine connection with John, and he was willing to do it. And yeah, I think one of the best benefits for John is, legacy, right? 200 years from now, it's still very great chance of John Maxwell programs being very, very relevant. And and I think, if I remember correctly, when you were here in Rochester speaking, when you approached John, I believe he was starting to think about retiring a little bit, right? Like slowing down.
He had already sold his company. He had sold his company to somebody. He had to buy his company back in order to do the deal.
Wow. So, you know what? A guy like that, he sells his company and starts golfing and watching TV. A lot of times they start to die, right? I mean, I think you extended his life because he's probably working harder than he ever has been. I see him traveling the world, but quote unquote work. He loves it, right? He loves it. So,
yeah, John, I think John's dream is to have his lights go out on stage. When he's under the lights, I think that's when he wants to go out. John is, I went to, we have 25 presidential invites around the world for us to bring in our team and lead transformation in countries. And I had an opportunity to be with John while he was meeting with the president of Paraguay, the cabinet, the Supreme Court. And that morning, he was meeting with the president at 9 o'clock in the morning. He was up at 4 o'clock in the morning, brought to a building across the street from the equivalent of their White House. He was on the phone with a translator in Taiwan, being translated for 1,000 leaders in China. Got done with that, went across, met with the president, his cabinet, and then for the next 12 hours, did 4 live speaking engagements, probably in front of 25,000 people in total. Here's a guy who's 70 years old running that pace, right? The rest of us are, we're dying, and he's boom, boom, boom. And I swear to you, David, after every single engagement he would get in, we were kind of like in like an armored Mercedes-Benz kind of truck. He would get in there, and he'd want to know, did he connect with the audience? Did he deliver on, the promise that event was staged for?
Yeah.
He wanted to know who's the upcoming audience, what are their needs, what are the expectations. And the beautiful thing is John wasn't asking, what are the expectations so I can meet them? He was asking, what are the expectations so I can exceed them? And there I think is another really key principle to entrepreneurship. If you think that you're going to be a successful entrepreneur by meeting people's expectations, you know what? That's called a job. You're expected to do that. If you're a true entrepreneur, you're looking for the wow factor, right? You're looking to exceed people's expectations.
Right. What a great lesson. I mean, a guy like John Maxwell, who has every right to have an ego and to, have the attitude, well, they're lucky to see me. He's still so humble, right? How can I exceed what are they looking for, right? How can I create value for them? And how can I exceed that, right? I mean, and that's why he's so successful, right? Yeah. And I love it. Well, you definitely picked the right guy to partner with, and so did he, right? I think it's a business marriage made in heaven.
Well, can I just kind of go into just a 60-second teaching rant?
Yeah, please.
Because I think this is another thing that might be a benefit to your audience and your listeners. It's been my experience that people can get into a business partnership over a lunch and a napkin, right? And in 15 minutes, they partner. and then it could take 5 years and $100,000 of court fees to get out of the deal.
Yeah.
So here's what I teach, and I've learned from, I've been an entrepreneur really most of my life. I was the kid that raked leaves, cut grass. I sold light bulbs door to door in Pittsburgh on the Strip District. I sold peanuts on the corner. I was always hustling for a buck. Here's what I've learned is that you should only partner up. You should never partner with somebody if you can either buy what they bring to the table, hire what they bring to the table, or train yourself in a reasonable amount of time to do what they do. If those three things are, if you're able to hire somebody else to do it, why would you partner? Because the minute you partner, you have to recognize there is no such thing as a 50-50 partnership. I'd be very honest with you, okay? My partnership with John is 90-10. I do 90% of the work, okay? John does 10% of the work. Now, we may split the money 50-50, but it's never going to be fair in terms of hours, right?
Yeah.
And if you're partnering with someone who brings the same value that you bring, you will keep score against them, and keeping score is the starting point of all resentment, and resentment leads to revenge every single time. Wow. You'll seek to get even. So my recommendation is you partner up. You partner with somebody who brings so much to the table that you could never hire. Could you buy somebody who brings the value John Maxwell brings? Never. Could you take the time to get that good? Never. So it was a partner up for me. Now, if you find somebody who brings the same value. Now, I'm not saying that you can do the same things. I'm saying the same value to the business. Because, one person may be the speaker. The other person, like me, is the business guy. I bring equal value to John as the business guy, as the guy who can run the business machine. Now, he's much greater than I am as a communicator, but my giftedness in building businesses match the value he brings to the business as the speaker. So we bring equal value, right? But in completely different areas. He could not hire somebody to do what I do, and it would have taken his organization years to make all the mistakes that I had made, and he didn't have the time for the learning curve. So if we're bringing to somebody who has kind of the same value and they're not exceeding value in one of those areas, and you could hire them out, what you should do is collaborate. Mm-hmm. And there's a big difference between collaboration and partnering, because collaboration, we very clearly keep score. We very clearly say, we're going to collaborate on this project, right? You and I are kind of collaborating today. And we talked about how much time there were going to be, the right to be able to talk about my business on your thing. We're collaborating. We're bringing, and there's a beginning and there's an end to this engagement. And that's what we're doing. And then you can mentor around. There's times where I mentor John, and there's times where John mentors me. There's times where I can sit down with my lawyer, really sharp guy, I can mentor him. And there's times where we have younger people who mentor me. I've got a lot of millennials who work for me in their early 30s, and they mentor me. So here's the deal. Partner up, collaborate across, and mentor around. If you get those combinations wrong, it's going to be a bad business day.
What a valuable, incredible lesson that really hasn't been clarified to me as well as you just did. Thank you for that. And it's almost like I want to relate it to the joke of the guy that, he's not that great looking, but his wife is hot. And so he married up, right? And it's like you and John both married up. I mean, he married up with your business skills, and you married up with obviously his incredible skills as a leadership legend in the world. And I think, but most importantly about that is you both respect each other for your strengths, right? Like you're okay with doing 90% of the work because you would have 0% of it if you didn't partner with John, right? Vice versa, right?
That's the deal. And you know what? I don't ever tell John what to say on stage, and John doesn't ever come in and make decisions in the business.
Right. You both respect your superpowers.
Yeah. Yeah. And we both respect each other's decision-making, each other's vision. I think what John and I both have in different areas, of course, David, is we both have the gift of discernment. I trust that John has the gift of discernment to discern what that audience needs and to get and achieve the goal that we need as a business and as an organization, and to exceed those clients' expectations. And John trusts that I have the discernment to make the right financial decisions for, a huge organization that operates globally. Our platform is translated in 4 other languages. In the next 12 months, we'll launch also in Portuguese and Japanese. And so he trusts me and my gift of discernment to make those business decisions. And because of that, we make a really good partnership.
Yeah, I love it. Listen, Paul, I could talk to you forever. I know that you're a busy man. You agreed to around a half an hour. I've already exceeded that. But last but not least, I just want to ask you about, you have a program called the Empowered Life Lessons. And it's at empowerlifelessons.com, right? Yeah. And that could be something that the Avanti family could really get some value from. So can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I do a weekly live lesson. Each lesson is about 45 minutes to an hour. I teach it for free, and you can consume it for free for 48 hours. During those 48 hours, if you want to buy the license right to be able to have it in kind of your digital library, during that time it sells for $10. After the 48-hour free period, it goes on sale for $20, and we sell those in packs of 40. So we have thousands of people, and we're teaching business, we're teaching personal growth. From my experiences from around the world, I've been fortunate enough to literally travel all over the world. I have business partners all over the world. My businesses have generated nearly $500 million. And I work with every stream of influence, the 7 streams of influences in every country, in media and entertainment and government. I work at the highest levels with those people. And so I like to think what I'm able to bring to the audience is really just, I call it being able to see around the corner. Kind of having my fingers not on just kind of the pulse of what's going on, and not on the cutting edge, but on the bleeding edge of thought leaders and things that are relevant to help people grow personally and to grow professionally in their businesses. So thank you for the opportunity to give the pitch. I appreciate that. Yep,
absolutely. And it's at empoweredlifelessons.com.
Yes.
All right. So excellent. So Paul, this has been super, super fantastic. Appreciate it so much. If our Avanti family wants to learn more about you, possibly reach out to you and your organization, what are the best ways to do that?
My personal email is paul@paulmartinelli.net. It is .net. .com goes to a real estate agent in Canada who wish he didn't have the domain.
Is he forwarding for you?
Yeah, he does. He's a good guy. I send him a Harry and David basket every year because he sends me money. But it's paul@paulmartinelli.net. That actually comes into my inbox. I clear probably personally about 75% of my emails, and then I've got 2 fantastic assistants that you probably work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Both great.
Wow, they're fantastic. And if you write an email, you get a response, and most likely it's going to be from me.
Excellent, Paul. And then paulmartinelli.com is your website?
.net.
.net. Oh, that's your website too. .net. Oh, paulmartinelli.net. I've been to your site. It's a great website as well. Yes. Paul, thank you so much for your time and all the incredible great work you're doing for the world. Truly appreciate it. We're blessed to have you on the planet, and I'm glad you were born.
Well, thank you so much, Fran. I really appreciate the opportunity. I know it's been a year for us to get our schedules right. And so Thank you so much for being persistent and for giving me this opportunity. You've built a wonderful platform of just, people who really want to make a difference in the world. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. I strive to be pleasantly persistent. Right. And I think, just the endurance of hanging around for a year and pleasantly knocking at the door, eventually people give up. Right. All right, Dave, come on.
Thank you.
So thank you, Paul. Thank you, Avanti family, for listening. Totally honored. Hey, if you get a chance, go to AvantiEntrepreneur.com. We have all of our resources there, the 150 plus podcasts we have, events, content, etc., here to help you move forward with your business and your life at AvantiEntrepreneur.com. Thank you, Avanti family. Thank you, Paul. Everybody have a great day and stay awesome.
Be well. Bye-bye.